Welcome to the Tech Room, your weekly breakdown of semiconductors, AI, and gaming. I'm Jess.
And I'm Mark. This is the podcast brought to you by SBN Media Studio.
Today on the show, we have a packed agenda. In semiconductors, the multi-billion-dollar 2-nanometer foundry war between TSMC, Samsung, and Intel. In AI, the packaging and memory bottlenecks that are quietly choking the global AI accelerator roadmap. And in gaming, we are skipping the software this week to focus entirely on how the AI hardware crunch is driving up costs for PC builders and the automotive sector.
The thread connecting it all this week. The global semiconductor industry enters a high-stakes 2-nanometer logic transition as an unprecedented memory wall crisis driven by sold-out NAND and soaring DRAM prices reshapes foundry economics and equipment intensity. Let's dive in.
So to really understand what's happening this week, you kind of have to imagine trying to change the engines on a commercial airplane, right? While it's in mid-flight.
Right, which is, that's already terrifying.
Exactly. But now imagine attempting that exact same feat, except the engines are roughly the size of a single atom, and you have to change billions of them simultaneously. That is exactly the scale of what the global semiconductor industry is attempting right now. We are jumping right into the bleeding edge of silicon today. The 2-nanometer foundry war is... well, it's officially here.
Yeah, and the sheer physical scale of what TSMC is doing is just staggering. They are executing the most aggressive expansion in their entire corporate history right now. They're ramping 2-nanometer, which they call N2 production, across 5 different fabrication plants simultaneously. Yeah, 5, which is an incredible physical footprint. Just building the concrete shells and the clean rooms for 5 leading-edge fabs takes years. And tens of billions of dollars. And to put the manufacturing volume in perspective for you, TSMC expects their N2 output capacity to exceed their 3-nanometer ramp by roughly 45%.
That is a massive, massive leap in volume. And major allocations of this new capacity are already locked down, right? So the initial wave is basically absorbed by Apple, NVIDIA, and Qualcomm. But here's the really critical metric. The data indicates that TSMC is reporting their N2 yields are actually tracking ahead of where their 3-nanometer generation was at this exact same point in time.
Which is a fascinating data point, especially when you look at what's happening across the aisle over in South Korea. Because Samsung Foundry is in a remarkably tough spot right now. Industry analysis shows that Samsung is really struggling with their 2-nanometer yields. They're stuck right around the mid-50% range.
Ooh.
Yeah. And if you're looking at the economics of a fab, you really need to cross that 60% yield threshold just to achieve stable, profitable mass production.
Right, because, if you're throwing away almost half your chips due to defects, the whole financial math collapses. A single fully processed 2-nanometer wafer costs tens of thousands of dollars. You've already paid for the clean room, the electricity, the billions in equipment. If you increase your yield by just 1 or 2% across tens of thousands of wafers a month, that revenue basically drops straight to your bottom line. But getting that improvement at 2 nanometers it's brutal.
It is, and Samsung is really feeling that pain right now. Some of the market reports indicate they are aggressively cutting their node pricing by up to 33%, just to try and lure customers in.
Wow, a 33% discount.
Yeah, but even with that, major players like Qualcomm are still opting for TSMC's N2P process for their next-gen mobile silicon. They need the reliability more than they need the discount, But we should probably talk about why this is so difficult. Why are yields so hard to dial in this time around?
Because we aren't just making the old transistor smaller anymore. This is that mid-flight engine change I was talking about earlier. The entire industry is officially moving away from FinFET transistors to a completely new 3D architecture called Gate-All-Around, or GAA.
Right.
For the last decade, FinFET worked by essentially draping the gate over 3 sides of the silicon channel to control the flow of electricity. But at 2 nanometers, the structures are so unbelievably tiny that electricity literally just leaks out the bottom.
Exactly. Quantum tunneling becomes a very real, very massive issue.
Yeah.
So Gate-All-Around physically rips out that core design. Instead of a fin, you use these incredibly thin ribbons of silicon, and the gate completely surrounds those ribbons on all 4 sides.
Okay.
So you get total control over the electrical current.
Right.
But mechanically, building a 4-sided gate at an atomic scale is just phenomenally difficult. That completely new physical structure is exactly why Samsung is struggling, and honestly, why TSMC pulling it off across 5 fabs is so significant.
Yeah, but we absolutely cannot ignore the wild card in this race for Intel. They are in the absolute most critical phase of their turnaround right now. Their Intel 18A node is scheduled to hit high-volume manufacturing testing in early 2026. And this is massive because 18A combines gate-all-around, what they brand as ribbon FET, with power via backside power delivery.
And we really should unpack backside power delivery because it is a genius physical solution to a major bottleneck. Historically, power lines and signal lines were woven together on the top of the silicon chip, right? Create this chaotic traffic jam.
Oh, yeah.
Backside power delivery physically moves all the power routing to the bottom of the chip, leaving the top entirely free for data signals. It's brilliant. And Intel is rolling this out roughly a year ahead of TSMC.
Technically, yes. But financially, it is a completely different story. Financial filings show that Intel Foundry is facing an estimated $8.5 billion operating loss for 2026.
Yeah, that's rough.
I mean, they are taking a massive hit as they try to pivot from exclusively building their own chips to becoming a foundry for external customers. But there is a bright spot keeping them in the game, which is their advanced packaging. Their EMIB technology is actually pulling in billions, especially after they lock down partnerships to package Google's TPUs.
Right. But transitioning to gate-all-around across all these foundries requires an entirely new ecosystem of tools. We're officially moving from an era of lithography-led scaling to materials-driven performance.
Yeah.
And we're seeing this massive shift where companies like Applied Materials are releasing what they call angstrom-class tools.
Angstrom class, yeah.
Specifically systems for precision selective nitride PTVD and Trillium ALD.
And for those tracking the engineering side of this deep dive, ALD stands for atomic layer deposition. You are literally laying down materials one single atom at a time. This is the new battleground because traditional lithography, just drawing the lines with light, just isn't enough anymore. A single gate all-around transistor now requires over 500 individual process steps.
500 steps.
Yeah. You need atomic scale precision to deposit metals and dielectrics inside these microscopic 3D ribbons. It's like moving from drawing a city map with a finer pen to actually inventing a new type of steel so you can build taller skyscrapers.
That's a great analogy. Though ASML is still the undisputed king of the lithography side, obviously. They're targeting shipments of over 60 standard extreme ultraviolet, or EUV, systems in 2026. But what's really telling is the hesitation around their newest, most advanced machines. The high-NA EUV systems.
Right.
Because these units cost roughly $400 million each.
And TSMC has signaled a very cautious approach here. They are buying them, but strictly keeping them for R&D. If you are trying to make the math work for initial 2-nanometer mass production, running a $400 million lithography tool just destroys your margins right now.
Completely destroys them.
So they are leaning heavily into those materials engineering tricks from Applied Materials instead.
Which naturally brings us to where all these highly sensitive, incredibly expensive tools are actually being shipped, right? Because the entire map of global semiconductor manufacturing is being physically rewritten by government intervention right now. A recent government report confirmed the U.S. Department of Commerce has now awarded $30.9 billion in direct funding across 40 projects under the Cheech IPS Act. Yeah, and we already have one leading-edge logic fab in Arizona that's certified complete.
And it's not just the U.S. India's Semiconductor Mission 2.0 is crossing some serious milestones. Micron's assembly and test facility in Sanand is operational, and the Tata TSMC fab in Dhalara is targeting first silicon by late 2026. Meanwhile, China is pushing to expand its advanced chip production fivefold, aiming for 100,000 wafers a month, specifically to counter those U.S. export controls.
The geopolitical strategy everywhere is identical, right?
Yeah.
Reduce dependence on Taiwan and South Korea. Because right now, those two hubs make and package roughly 75% of the world's chips.
Yeah, but building these incredibly complex 2-nanometer chips, these, skyscrapers of silicon, is entirely useless if you can't physically wire them together, which is the exact wall the AI industry is slamming into right now with advanced packaging.
Exactly. The biggest bottleneck for AI accelerators isn't the silicon die itself. It's TSMC's CoWoS packaging, which stands for chip-on wafer-on substrate.
Let's explain what CoWoS actually does for you guys listening. When you have a massive AI processor and stacks of high bandwidth memory, you can't just wire them together on a standard green motherboard. The data needs to move way too fast.
Right.
So CoWoS places all these chips side by side on an ultra-fast silicon highway, which is the substrate, allowing them to communicate with massive bandwidth.
And demand for that highway is completely unprecedented. Market data shows TSMC is aggressively scaling their CoWoS capacity from about 35,000 wafers a month in late 2024 to a projected 130,000 by the end of 2026.
That is nearly a 4x increase in capacity.
Yeah, but it's still 100% sold out.
Unbelievable.
NVIDIA has essentially locked up the vast majority of that capacity. It is so constrained that Google reportedly had to cut its 2026 T-Blitz production target by 25% simply because they couldn't get access to TSMC's packaging lines. Think about that. If you have a fabricated AI die but no CoWoS packaging, you don't have a product. You just have an incredibly expensive paperweight.
Which is exactly why Intel's EMIB technology is suddenly so vital as a secondary option, right? EIB stands for Embedded Multi-Die Interconnect Bridge. So instead of placing the chips on a massive silicon substrate highway like CoWoS, Intel embeds a tiny silicon bridge directly inside the standard circuit board, just connecting the edges of the two chips.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, it's like building a local subway tunnel between two buildings instead of paving a massive highway underneath the whole city. It is cheaper, and it is actively saving companies who are locked out of TSMC's supply.
But here's the thing. Even if you solve the packaging bottleneck, you still have to deal with the memory crisis. The data being processed by these GPUs has to come from somewhere, and the industry is currently colliding headfirst with the memory wall.
The memory wall, yeah.
This is a fundamental physical limitation. Large language models don't just require math. They require moving terabytes of weights and parameters constantly. The AI processor is an incredibly fast brain, but it spends most of its time literally just waiting for the data to arrive from the slower memory library. So to fix this, you need high bandwidth memory, or HBM.
And this leads us perfectly into the silicon accelerator race itself, because NVIDIA is already certifying HBM4 supply for their upcoming Vera Rubin platform to tackle this exact memory wall. And AMD is pushing their MI400 series. But there is a really fierce debate playing out right now in the research community about actual hardware performance.
Right. There was a recent paper pointing out that despite AMD's MI300X having roughly 1.5 times more theoretical compute capacity than NVIDIA's H100, it only achieves 37 to 66% of the real-world inference performance.
Wait, we really need to clarify that gap because raw compute is absolutely not the whole picture here. You can have a massive, powerful engine, but if your fuel lines are clogged, you go nowhere. That performance gap comes down to interconnect efficiency. NVIDIA's NVLink technology allows their GPUs to talk to each other and pool their memory far more seamlessly than AMD's Infinity Fabric currently does in these specific AI workloads. Basically, the processor cores are starving for data.
And feeding those processors is causing massive collateral damage downstream. The industry is currently calling this Ramageddon 2026.
Ramageddon, I love that.
It's fitting. Suppliers like SK Hynix, Micron, and Samsung are pouring every ounce of their resources into high-bandwidth memory to feed these AI accelerators. Global DRAM industry revenue rose 81% sequentially to $97 billion in Q1 2026 alone. Conventional DRAM contract prices have spiked by up to 98%.
A near 100% increase in a single quarter is it's catastrophic for downstream hardware. We saw confirmation recently that all of 2026 NAND flash production capacity is completely sold out, and prices have more than doubled.
And it really just comes down to a brutal floor space equation inside the clean rooms. Making one HBM wafer physically consumes the manufacturing capacity of roughly 3 standard DDR5 wafers.
Wow, 3 to 1.
Yeah, so every time an AI company orders more HBM, it literally crowds out the standard memory supply used for conventional servers, laptops, and smartphones.
It is classic trickle-down economics, but entirely in reverse. The top AI players are basically vacuuming up the supply chain. You might think mobile or automotive chips are insulated from this, right? But they aren't. NVIDIA's Grace and Vera CPU platforms utilize massive amounts of LPDDR5X memory. That is the exact same ultra-low power memory used in premium smartphones and smart cars.
And the alarm bells are already ringing there. We're seeing warnings from major foundry CEOs that this DRAM shortage will severely squeeze logic chip sales in the automotive sector. When car manufacturers try to source memory for next-generation smart vehicles, they are walking into a market where suppliers hold total, absolute pricing power.
And we are already seeing the models for this. The data shows that 64 gigabyte RDM memory could easily double in price year over year. So if you're out there listening and you're trying to build a PC or deploy an enterprise server or manufacture an electric vehicle, your bill of materials is skyrocketing simply because you are competing for wafer space against an AI data center.
Okay, if you step back and look at everything we just covered, there's a very clear thread here. The global semiconductor industry is attempting its most difficult physical transition ever with 2-nanometer gate-all-around logic. At the exact same moment, it is facing an unprecedented memory wall crisis.
Exactly. The foundry war is no longer just about shrinking the transistor. That is only a part of the battle now. The real war is being fought over equipment intensity, like who can secure those atomic-level angstrom deposition tools without destroying their margins. It is being fought over packaging, who has the CoOS or EMIB capacity to actually integrate these chips. And it is being fought over memory supply navigating sold-out NAND and storing DRAM costs.
And the companies that master this Trinity advanced logic, advanced packaging, and memory integration, they will dictate the next decade of hardware.
All right.
Everyone else is just going to be fighting for the scraps left on the wafer.
Very well said. Before we wrap up, let's look at what we are keeping an eye on for next week. For me, I am going to be tracking Intel's upcoming 18A yield reports very, very closely. With TSMC's packaging capacity practically maxed out through 2026, I really want to see if Intel's EME technology can genuinely capture more of that overflow demand from chip designers who are locked out of the CoWS supply chain.
That is going to be crucial to watch. I will be keeping a close eye on SK Hynix. They are preparing to sample their 1C nanometer HBM4E memory in the second half of the year. If they can maintain their technical lead in high bandwidth memory over Micron and Samsung, they essentially hold the keys to NVIDIA's next generation of AI accelerators. In a market crippled by a memory wall, that is a massive position of power.
Absolutely. And I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over. We spend so much time tracking the billions of dollars flowing into 2-nanometer nodes and advanced packaging. But next time you look at the silicon powering your phone or your car, ask yourself what happens when atomic scaling literally runs out of physical atoms. We are manipulating materials at the angstrom level today, but in 5 to 10 years, we hit the fundamental unbreakable limits of quantum physics. Where does the semiconductor industry go when you physically cannot shrink the map anymore? That's your Tech Room for this week. I'm Jess.
And I'm Mark. This podcast is produced by SBN Media Studio. Subscribe, leave a review, and we'll see you next Sunday.